something to put in. We will have something to put on our YouTube channel. Okay, so I'll be giving Ma'am Llewllyn the floor now. Okay, it's your time.
All right, so if we could start with the first slide, then we'll go. Okay, so the first slide talks about how motivation to connect people and environment differs between typically developing children and children on the spectrum, or any other child with a developmental delay, cognitive impairment, special need, and what is intrinsic and versus extrinsic motivation. So first I'll just go into the intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation is what a lot of typically developing children, people have naturally. They are just inherently motivated to want to be social, want to please others, want to show that they know that other people are around, want to connect with their world, their environment. And then there are those other children who do not have that internal motivation to make those connections, those meaningful connections, and learn to and want to communicate naturally. So those children require extrinsic motivations to want to connect to people and want to communicate. In that respect, the people who need intrinsic motivation, parents and adults or whoever interact with that child don't have to do too many extra things or provide too many extra supports to get their child to, learn to imitate language, learn to imitate gross motor movements. They can pick up on language, they can pick up on facial expressions, gestures, just by watching other people. They're very in tune as to what other people are doing and pick things up naturally. Versus a child on the spectrum is so typically in their own head. They're not really concerned with what is happening around them. Their attention is mostly focused on an item or their, whatever script they have going on in their head. It could be many different things. They could just be focusing on, their sensory issues, how they're feeling is so intense. So they would be happiest just being in their own, world of their own existence. So they need extrinsic motivation. They need token systems, reward systems. They need first then boards. They need us as their caregiver or teacher or whoever to pull them out of their own head and help them to connect, help them to make those meaningful connections with people, with the environment, what's happening around them. And so we have to kind of be the facilitator for that to happen. So that's pretty much that first slide. Okay, so one thing that people need to realize is nonverbal imitation comes before verbal imitation. So when a typically developing child, when a baby is born, they're naturally looking and watching facial expressions, and they're imitating and they're smiling when they see their other people smile at them, they'll smile back. When a parent or other people are doing the baby talk or babbling to them, they'll babble back and do kind of that imitation naturally. And it is a progression. And you can do peekaboo and wave, and they'll use they'll start waving back and doing the peekaboo and wanting it to do it along with you. But children on the spectrum will not do that naturally. It takes work, it takes training and a lot of practice and a lot of repetition to get them to imitate non-verbally. The way that I have gotten children to start doing that when I was doing ABA therapy is to just be sitting across from them with a highly preferred item, something maybe they hadn't seen before that they're really excited about, and you can tell they really want it. It lights up, it spins, it makes noises, could be bubbles, could be a sensory activity. But so you just tell them, do this, and you clap, or you do some other kind of gross motor movement that is quick and it's easy to see what you're doing. And then if they have no response, then you take their hands and you make them clap, and then you give them good job, and then you give them the reward, the reinforcing item. So that tells them, oh, okay, they did something they were supposed to do. And then you let them play with that for a little bit, and then you say, my turn, and you take it back, and then you do it again. Do this, and then you just keep doing this exchange. And you don't want to do too many different imitations, like gross motor movements at a time, until, because then if you add on too many, it's going to take longer for them to master it. So just 2 to 3 things at the most until they've mastered it. When you can say, do this, and then they do it, then you're like, yay, you know, then you know they have that one, and then it's okay to like add another one. Another way I do this with my students in school is through music and movement in the classroom. There are YouTube videos. There's Dr. Jean, she's a speech therapist, and she does some really fun songs. There's the banana dance, where there's different movements that you do with your arms as she's singing. And I stand right behind my students, and I make sure that I make them do the movements along with her. That is how they help to connect with what they're seeing and also doing the same thing. So they learn that what they see someone else do, that they're supposed to do too. Because communication is a two-way street, they have to learn, like, oh, when you say something, I'm supposed to say something back. Okay, so there's also Jack Hartman is an awesome resource. He has a lot of fun music and movement videos that I play for my special needs students. He has like, I can move my body like anything, that song. And so again, he goes through different movements. So I stand right behind my students and I make sure that they're doing the movements that he's doing on the screen. So anytime if your child is watching a show, watching a video, and there's movements happening, you can make sure and help them do the same movements, so they're making that connection with what they're watching. And then once they are imitating non-verbally, then you can start working toward them imitating sounds and words that you're saying. So you would just want to have them, you just make different facial expressions, you can make different sounds, with your mouth. And you can say like, ba, 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 and then see if they can go ba, 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 ba after you did it. That would be imitating and starting to initiate and imitate language. So you always move from the nonverbal imitation to verbal imitation. Another thing that a lot of people don't realize is that children on the spectrum, they will not start talking unless they have a reason to start talking. If you are very in tune to your child, that is great. You're a great parent. You're very in tune to what your child needs. But a lot of parents will just give their kids things, like, oh, you're thirsty, here's some water. Oh, you're hungry, here's some chips, or here's, some goldfish, or whatever it is they're wanting to eat, and wanting to keep them happy and just wanting to give them stuff. If that's happening, they're not going to have a reason to start talking. And then they're going to be like, why should I talk? I'm getting whatever I need, right? So it is up to us to set up those situations where your child is motivated to start talking and has to start talking to get what they're wanting. In my classroom, my students do not get anything unless they either do the sign for it, give a picture for it, or say something to get it. So that is also very important to understand. If they're holding up a bag of chips to me, then they have to say open or chips or open please, or I want chips or something along that line to indicate to me what they're wanting, or I won't open them. And it's taken sometimes, I've waited 30 minutes, 45 minutes, even for a child to make that request, but only until I know that they can do it. If I've seen them do it or heard them do it, then I know that they can do it, then I make that a requirement, and I don't give in, because if you give in, then they're just not going to try as hard, and they're going to know that, oh, if I don't say anything, you'll give in eventually. So yes, once you hear your child say a word or do the sign to get something, then you need to require that every time. And then also how to get your child to initiate language. That comes a lot with modeling language. Language should be modeled constantly, all day long. What you talk about, what your child is doing, you talk about what you're doing. If your child is, washing his hands, then you're like, oh, we're going to turn on the water. Oh, now we're going to get our hands wet. Okay, let's get soap. And then you're emphasizing some of those words, so they're hearing those words often and very clearly. Oh, okay, let's scrub. All right, now we need to dry. So you're modeling those words. And then also if they're playing like with a car, then you can model, okay, push, you're gonna push the car, or you're gonna make the car go. Oh, now we're gonna stop. So everything that the child's doing is a time when you can be modeling language to them. When I push my kids on the swing, they have to say swing, or some of them have to say push, or some have to say push me, just depending on what their level of language is. If your child is nonverbal completely, then you only want to model one word at a time. You don't want to do too many words. You don't want to be modeling a whole sentence for them, because that'll just lose them. They'll just be like tuning you out. So you want to stay right at or just above where they are in their verbal language level. If they are starting to put, if they're consistently using one word to communicate, more, help, go, eat, and they're just naming things, they're labeling things, and they're making requests but only using one word, then you want to start modeling two words. You can say, open please, or you can add want to it, want open, want help, want more, or more cookies, or more chips. So you always want to stay modeling the language either at their level, or once that becomes consistent, then you want to move it up a little bit more to challenge them and to get them continuously increasing their language. So I guess that's it for that. I probably already went into a future slide. Okay, so the next slide is how to know when to fade out visual support, sign language, and verbal prompts. So children who are just, starting their development, and they're, starting to learn how to imitate things and learn how to talk, they need a lot of prompting, a lot of, modeling language, like I said. So if you're using visual supports, then that's great. You're using a picture exchange system where you teach them that this picture is for this item. This picture is for this item. If you want this, you have to give something to get it. So they'd have to give you a picture. And then you want to make sure, if you're using the picture exchange communication system, also known as PECS, that you're using that verbal language. You're modeling the verbal language. Don't just take the picture from them and not say anything. You have to say what they should be saying if they could talk, because they're hearing it. The more you model it, and the more frequently and consistently that you model a word, the faster they will pick it up and start using it. So if they are asking for, let's just use goldfish crackers, because I know a lot of kids on the spectrum love goldfish, just in my experience. Those salty, crunchy things are a favorite. So pretzels, chips, whatever, Cheez-Its, crackers, anything like that, when they're making a request, so they give you the picture of it, and that's great. Do you want to give them a whole bowl full, or a whole handful, or a whole bunch at a time? No, because then they'll only ask for it that one time, and they won't have the opportunities to continuously practice and get that repetition. You want to give them one or two, depending on the size of what it is they're eating. One goldfish may not be reasonable, but maybe 3 at a time, and then wait. And then when you're showing that they want more because they're reaching for it, then you put the picture down in front of them again, or you tap it and you're getting them. If they don't grab the picture, then you do hand over hand, is what I use all the time in my classroom. Hand over hand prompting is when you're taking their hand, you're helping them pick up the picture and put it into your hand. And then you say, goldfish, as they're giving it to you, and then you give them more goldfish. Then you just start all over again, and you just keep going. It's a cycle. It's a repetition, repetition, repetition. If you are doing a cookie and it's a pretty good sized cookie, break the cookie up into small pieces. They might get mad and not like that, but oh well, if they want the cookie, then they're going to have to eat it like that, because they're going to have to keep getting those opportunities to ask for a cookie over and over again. Once they have several pictures that they are able to make requests for things, then you can put them all up on a choice board, so that whenever they're wanting something, they know you teach them to go over to the choice board, pull it off, and give it to you. Once they're able to do that, then you want to make sure that they're able to pull it off and go give it to somebody like across the room or in another room in your house. And still, that's initiating that communication. They're coming to find you to give it to you. Now, a lot of kids with autism sort of initiate it. They're grabbing your hand and wanting to reach you to reach it, or wanting you to get something for them by grabbing your hand, or they walk you over to something. When they're doing this, that's good, and that should be, you should give verbal praise for that, like, oh, thank you for telling me, that you want this. But then that's when you redirect them to the picture. Oh, let's tell me here what you want, and you get them to give you the picture for it. And it's also important to have whatever it is they're wanting in view, but out of reach. If they can access it on their own whenever they want, they can just go over to a cabinet, get in and get it, open up the fridge, grab it. Again, it's just like the verbal language and the talking. They're not going to have a reason to initiate language if they're able to just access it themselves. Like, why bother? Why going through all that trouble? So it's so important to keep those really motivating things that they really want badly and will be asking for a lot it's up here on the upper shelf, out of their reach. They can see it, and they want it. How are they going to get it? They have to ask for it and make a request. Also, sign language is great because you can do hand over hand and make them and help them make the signs, and model it and help them make the sign. with verbal language, you can't pull the words out of their mouth. So that's really, really hard. So sign language, same as the picture where you can do hand over hand and help them pick it up or pull it off of a choice board and give it to somebody, are great because they're getting that practice, they're getting the prompting and the support that they need through hand over hand. If there is time, I can show you some basic signs that a lot of young kids, will need to use if that's what you want. At the end, if we have time, I can do that. The main ones I use in my classroom for my little preschoolers, things like eat, more, help, those kind of things. And we can go over some of those so you can start working on getting your kids to play, to communicate with you. But that would be something that you'd have to do every time. If you know that they want to eat, you have to make them do the sign for eat. If they want more of something, they have to do the sign for more every time. That's the only way that your child is going to really pick up the language quickly. And then to fade it, it's pretty basic. Once you start seeing them do one of these methods, the sign language, also with the sign language, you want to make sure you're always modeling the verbal language with it. If they're doing more and they're sitting here like this and you're not saying anything, but you give it to them, then they're not going to get past that sign language phase. You want to say, oh, more, you want more. So you're constantly modeling that. So once they are able to say more on their own, then there's no reason to do the sign for it anymore. Same with the picture. Once they can request goldfish by themselves, with even if they're handing you the picture and saying goldfish, well, then there's no reason for them to give you that picture anymore, and you can fade that picture out. And then same thing, once they're using the one word to make requests, to just label things that they're seeing, dog, car, all that. Once they're doing that consistently, then you can stop using pictures, and then you're just modeling the language, the verbal language, and building vocabulary as well. You want to make sure you're building that vocabulary early on. But it's very important to be consistent in whatever you're going to call something, because if you're changing it all the time, then that's going to confuse the child and they're not going to pick it up as fast. So just make sure you stay consistent. Like, you don't want to say couch and then sofa and couch, and so just switching it back and forth. Make sure you pick one. Or, oh, this is your cup, oh, but this is your drink. Just like keep it consistent and very basic in the beginning. After they have more words and more language, then you can add other words and more build onto that vocabulary. But early on, you don't want to confuse them. I think I'm ready for the next slide. Okay, so I believe I pretty much talked about this one already. Using nonverbal communication to support language, that the PECS is the picture exchange communication system that I mentioned, American Sign Language that I mentioned, and then communication boards and choice boards. I did mention choice boards. My students in my classroom all have pictures of all of the activities that I have in my classroom that they can have during choice time. They all know that part of their daily routine is to go over when it's choice time. They check their schedule, they put their choice time card down on the table by their name, and then they go over to the choice board and they have to pull something off, put it on the I want sentence strip, go over and give it to myself or one of my assistants and ask for it. They have to say, I want, and then whatever it is. Now, my new ones, I just had 2 3-year-olds start. They don't have to do the whole sentence, but they were working on hand over hand, making a choice, pulling something off, and then handing it to somebody. But they just only are at that stage where we're just modeling the one word. Legos or blocks or cars, with them because they don't have the language yet and it's new to them. So I'm just doing, it's how I differentiate for my kids. And then some kids now don't even need to use the choice board. They're just now expected to tell us what they want when it's choice time. They're just supposed to say, I want this, and come and tell us. So a communication board is when you're using those core words that are the most common in the English language every day, and you have pictures of the different words like yes, no, more, happy, sad. There's all different categories, and you have a communication board out for those children who are nonverbal. They'd have to be able to point to it and like tell you, you know, up, where's on, or in, or under. You know, you have to teach them the pictures, and then they can look at the choice board. And if you have that displayed somewhere in your house, they can go over and point to things to be able to communicate as well. But even when they're doing that, you want to use the verbal language as modeling a lot as well. I did talk about this, the importance of modeling language at your child's verbal language level. Their verbal language level is pretty much how many words they can say at a time. If they're not talking at all, then their verbal language level would be no words. But if they're generally using one word to communicate, then their verbal language level will be one word utterance. It's called an utterance every time you say something. So if they're starting to put two words together, then they're at the 2-word utterance verbal language level. We talked about giving those opportunities for repetition, very important. Wait time. If I know that my child knows how to say something, before I just start off prompting them right away, I wait. I look at them like this, like I'm waiting for them to say something for a good 10 to 15 seconds. It can seem like a really long time while you're standing there, but it's so important to give them that opportunity to get it out first before you do it, because you don't want them to become too dependent on you prompting them all the time and them just repeating what you're saying. If you feel like that's happening, that's when you need to start using that wait time to give them that opportunity to say it on their own. Or sometimes I'll just do like a partial, I'll put my mouth like I'm about to say it and see if that will get it out of them, or just make the first sound that the word starts with. So that's what I'm doing. I talked about using the consistent language, and all of this modeling language also helps build vocabulary. So you can start building in colors, you can start using numbers. Oh, you're playing with cars. You have a red car. Oh, you have 3 red cars, and you're starting to just build on that language and build the vocabulary. So instead of just talking about really basic stuff, you can start describing things and adding to it and giving them that vocabulary. Next slide. How to continue to expand verbal language. Yep, I did talk about that too, kind of making sure you're staying one step ahead of whatever their verbal language level is. And once you, like, say they're consistently saying help, help, help with whenever they need help, they're really good at saying help, then you want to start modeling help open, or help help take off, or help, you know, put away, or help clean up, or, you know what I'm saying? So you want to help them learn how to help say what they want and what they need help with. Don't just keep them at the help level. Like, that's great, they know how to ask for help, but at some point they need to be able to say, oh, I need help with this. Help with shoe, put shoe on, or help put on. So, or help fix, or help close it, or help take off. Okay, so that's what an example of expanding the verbal language. You want to just model that extra information, so they're hearing it. And then if they're hearing it often enough, they'll start expanding their own language as well to match yours. Next slide.
That will be
Yes, that's it.
that
Okay.
will be it. So okay, let me just okay. We have shared lots of very important points to us, and there's one question here, but I think generally you were able to answer this. But if you want to add, from Mommy Catherine Navarro Ignacio, she said, "My 5-year-old daughter doesn't communicate yet, but she can say words if I ask her to say it. How to improve her communication skills?"
So that is where you would want to use wait time to give her the opportunity to say things. It's just going to take time. I believe if she can say the word, then that's great. And then, like I said, she just needs that opportunity to have a lot of repetition. So, but it is, if she's at the stage where she's repeating you what you're saying, then that's great. And she's doing really well. And I think you just need to give it more time and just give her those opportunities. Just wait longer. Just be like, okay, hold it up or wait, or, just try to do that. Like, look like you want her to say something, and then she'll know, oh, I'm supposed to be saying something here. Do maybe the first sound that the word starts with and see if that can get her to say it on her own. And then just giving, that consistency and repetition, and then she'll start using it more independently on her own.
Okay. For when it comes to imitations and movements, can you give us some examples of nonverbal movements that we can do to be able to stir up imitation more from our kids, or stir up communication?
Yes. So you can have a child stomp their feet. Like, hey, do this, and you're stomping your feet, or you're turning around. You turn around, do this, and then you turn them around after you do it. And then, oh, good job. And then you turn around again, and then you help them turn around. And then, so there's jumping, stomping, clapping is what I did. Waving is another one. Covering your eyes, and boo, you can do that imitation. You can do like the knocking on a table. You can do just pretty much anything, touching different body parts, like touching your head. Make it a game and just get them to do that. But they also need that reinforcement in between. Like, once you help them do it, they need something to show, oh, yay, that's what, good job, you did that, or a reinforcement item, whatever they're really motivated by. You want to make sure they're getting that right away after they even if you help them do it, like you take their hands and you help them wave, or you take their hands and you help them clap, then you still want to give them the reinforcer, because you want it to make a positive experience and get the buy-in, so to speak. They're like interested. Okay, I'm getting something that I want. I'm interested in this now, and then you keep it going. You also have to know frustration levels. If your child's, you don't want to do it too long. You want to do short little bursts of time, maybe 5 minutes at the most, and then move on to something else. Then bring them back again. Okay, we're going to do it again, and then, so just short increments throughout the day is the best. Like, don't just let it drag on for 15, 20 minutes, because then, it won't be a fun experience for them. It won't be something that they're going to be wanting to do.
Yes, I remember you have said that we have to limit the movements from 2 to 3 movements only that we will.
Yes, you
Yeah.
only want to work on, like, pick 3 that you're going to do. I'm going to work on stomping my feet and clapping and waving or something like that. And then you just work on those 3. And then, or even just 1 at a time is fine too. Every once in a while, you just stop what you're doing. Oh, you did it. And then get them to do it. Take their hands and clap. Oh, good job, you did it. And then give them a reward. It doesn't have to be on a certain timetable. You could be doing anything, and then you could be out at the store, or you could be just on a walk or at the park, and stop what you're doing. Oh, do this, and just getting them to pay attention to what you're doing and helping them make that connection to what you're doing.
That will be nice, and it will be wise also to really do it very naturally, and yeah, building one activity to another, because if it's
Yeah.
going to be many, then it will be overwhelming for the kids.
Yes, yes.
Yes. And then
You don't want to work on too many things at one
yeah,
time. Just remember that. You can constantly build on what they're already able to do, but you have to make sure that it's independent and they've mastered it before you want to keep adding on.
yes, and then you have said that after building on some nonverbal imitations, then we can put on some sound. We can start introducing sound. So
I like to
can
do animal sounds, like
oh, I like
holding up,
that.
animal sounds. Like you can do songs that have sounds, like Old MacDonald Had a Farm is a good one, and see if they can make the animal sounds. Oh, a cow says moo, a pig says, most kids like to make those sounds and they think it's funny, and you can be goofy and silly with them. You can take an instrument like a xylophone or a stick and bang something and see if they can then give them the stick. Oh, your turn, and see if they'll do it after you. So you can have fun with
Oh,
it and just
yeah,
let
we
them.
should have fun, parents.
Yes, but the point is not to make it all serious, but to give them those opportunities to focus on what someone else is doing and want to do what they're doing, and have that kind of back and forth and that connection.
Okay, you know what, Jennifer? I I think we need to have part 2 because we have so much. We still have so much things to discuss, but we
Oh,
don't have
yes.
enough time
I can go
already.
into a lot of things. I could go into behavior and
Yeah,
modeling,
and we
teaching
want,
replacement behaviors.
yes, we want
Yeah.
to have that. What you're saying, that you're going to show us some of the things.
Oh, the
Yeah,
signs.
yeah. So in part 2, we look forward to that, because
Okay.
there's a lot of parents here in the group that their kids are still nonverbal yet. So that will be a great help for them. So, but for now, we really, for the sake of the time, so we will just um, put an end to this first. But before that, I will just make some announcement, parents, very important announcement. So this one, okay. Before we go, let me just share this with you. So on April 1, this coming Friday, we're going to have Autism Family Prayer together. I'll be posting the Zoom link. It's not going to be live, but it's going to be in Zoom. So I hope you will join, because the prayer is intentionally for our kids' progress. And then we're going to have parent and kids online meetup. How's that? We're going to have it on April 23 in connection to World Autism celebration. We're going to have kids and parents online meetup, and then we parents, we're going to wear white t-shirts or anything white, but the kids can choose between the 3 primary colors um, that they can choose, okay, to wear. So it will be fun. There will be lots of movements and many things that the parents and kids will be doing together. So mark this on your calendar. And for our wisdom from God's word, this is in Proverbs 3, verse 5 to 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not depend on your own understanding. Seek His will in all you do, and He will show you which path to take. We always trust God when it comes to our autism journey, because we know that yes, we can approach uh, our journey with science, with lots of intervention and everything. But when God moves, it is worth hundreds and hundreds of hours of intervention, because nothing is too difficult with God. Nothing is hard for God. All things are possible with God. So all we just have to do is just put our trust in Him, just put our hope in Him, and have faith in Him. And with that, I want us to pray together this prayer. Can we just pray this prayer together? Heavenly Father, thank you for reaching out to me to show your love and care for me. I know that many times I am overwhelmed with challenges and problems. Jesus, my Savior, I put my trust in you. Holy Spirit, you are my help and my guide every day. God, thank you for always helping me, leading me to follow and trust you every day. In your name, amen. Amen. So, okay. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. See you again in our next parents training. God bless and have a good night. Rest.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, it's done.
I wasn't on like all the chat or questions, or do you know how many people were watching, or?
Well, the last time I checked it, we have 23 people watching with
Oh, okay.
us. But then, the parents, they will watch whenever it's convenient with them. So they
Oh, okay.
after, sometimes they watch
Oh, okay.
after or in the evening or
That's why you record it. Okay. That's why you
yeah,
record it.
because
Okay.
many parents are really requesting recording actually. So we really need to share those practical things with them that we don't have enough time with, but hopefully next time we will be able to do
Okay.
that.
Yeah, I'd love to. I can write down the list of all the signs that would be something that they would need, like the help, more, play, all done, eat, thirsty,
Yeah, I really like when
different.
you mentioned about imitating animals, because
Yeah.
sometimes people are clueless what to do. I mean, I mean, parents are really clueless what to do. You're saying imitation. What are we going to do? How are we going to do that imitation and everything? But
Yeah.
there's a
Yeah.
lot
I'm
of things
hoping.
that you have said. Yeah,
Yes. Good.
especially
I
with
hope it did help people, because I know it's like a different way of thinking, and a lot of people don't think about things like that. That kids, they just look at their child. Like I get a lot of kids, like one of my new ones, my 3-year-old, they're like, well, he doesn't eat with a spoon or fork. Well, I got him and we went to the cafeteria and ate lunch. I handed him a fork, put it in his hand, and did hand over hand and helped him do it twice, and then he just kept eating with the fork. So it was like, parents just assume that if their kid is not doing something, that they can't do it. And it's like, well, but you have to show them how to do it. You have
yeah,
to teach
you have to
them
teach
how
them
to
to
do it.
know.
And you have to
Yes.
make it. If they go to pick it up with their hand, I'm like, nope, use your fork, and I make them, and I'm right there to make them